It has been approximately 3 years since the theatrical release of The Batman. Since day one, I have been an enormous fan of this film, and just last night, I sat down to watch it for the first time in quite a while, and my feelings haven't altered a bit. This is a stunningly shot movie, backed by an excellent musical score composed by the masterful Michael Giacchino. The cast does a really impressive job across the board, while the themes within the narrative are so clear and rich. After a couple delays, the sequel, which was at least at one point titled The Batman Part 2, is set to release in approximately 2.5 years. And I have some thoughts on the forthcoming project. Director Matt Reeves has proven himself to me time and time again, so no matter the delays, my faith in this talented man has not wavered one iota. I truly, barring a decade-long postponement, have no qualms with a delay of a year or two for this picture. There will only ever be one The Batman Part 2, and a slightly later release is only going to benefit this film's quality. In fact, another series within this franchise, one of my all-time favorites, is the Dark Knight trilogy, and although there will ultimately be a 5-year gap between movies 1 and 2 within this current series, there was also a 4-year gap between movies 2 and 3 in the 05 to 12 Nolan series. Not to mention, from the very beginning, the story of the Batman was discussed as a trilogy. So after the 2022 release of movie 1, movie 2 drops in 2027, then being realistically hypothetical, let's say there's a 4-year gap between movie 2 and the trilogy's conclusion. That would mean the 3-part series would end up spanning years 2022 to 2031. So in comparison, the Dark Knight trilogy's capper was released approximately 7 years after the premiere picture. Regarding my hypothetical, the final film in the Batman trilogy would be released approximately 9 years after the first entry in the series. Not much of a glaring difference there. Besides, I want to savor the run of these movies. Mind you, the duration of this video is going to be quite rambly. I'm sort of just going to be spitting out my thoughts here. Apologies in advance for any lack of comprehensiveness. I'm certainly curious as to how exactly the Penguin's conclusion will impact the plot of the Batman sequel. I heard Colin Farrell mention in an interview that he's featured in a handful of scenes, similar to his prevalence in the narrative of the 2022 flick. Evidently, he's not going to be front and center in the antagonist department, but I'm very much looking forward to learning precisely the part he's going to play here. Will we get an inside look at Oswald continuing to burrow his way into the mostly corrupt government? Maybe he'll largely work in the shadows until the picture's conclusion, at which point we learn that Oz has been sort of a puppet master of the main plot. Will Penguin, or the movie in general, have anything to do with the Court of Owls, to which we got a clever visual allusion in the finale of the Penguin series? Will we get the return of Selina Kyle, and or her half-sister Sofia Gigante for that matter? And now that we're on the subject of Arkham Asylum, what kind of, if any, part will the incarcerated Joker and Riddler play? After all, we did see the pair bantering about friendship nearing the end of the first film, and prior to the two bursting into maniacal laughter, Joker brings up the concept of a comeback story. If I were a betting man, I would think Barry Keoghan's Joker will have another brief appearance in this second movie, though there's something within me forcing me to not entirely be sold on a Riddler appearance, and I can't really articulate why, though I'd love to see Dano return. Maybe he'll show up in a stinger? I guess I just feel that Reeves has got to have his hands fuller than full with so many other elements, and you've got to draw the line somewhere in regard to character inclusion, especially in the villain department. And I'm sure our forthcoming primary foe will be a character or characters to whom we have yet to meet. Fuck, maybe we'll see the Riddler? I don't think so, though. I guess my ass is still hung up on the evident duo dynamic that we got from these two psychos. Moving on. While I'm sure Selina Kyle will be present in some form, I honestly don't expect to see the brilliant Kristen Milioti's Sophia, though again, perhaps in a post-credit stinger, which could then lead into a potential Penguin Season 2. I wouldn't expect much more from her than that, though again, I'd love to see her return, and I could be completely fucking wrong, but I just have an inkling that although the Batman and the Penguin are certainly interconnected, and there is some crossover, they're also two separate entities entities depicted via two separate mediums, and they each have their own MO. And I think it'd be a bit of a risk to have these two be inextricable, because then you're assuming that all potentially billion box office dollars worth of viewers have seen each and every episode of the series. All of that being said, who is going to be the primary antagonist of this piece? I've already mentioned the Court of Owls. Besides the little Easter egg, I think this crew's antagonism would actually be a pretty sensible route to take. We've really opened up the governmental corruption can of worms in these first two Reeves-verse projects, so a secret criminal society packed with wealthy elites would be a cool continuation of that concept. I've had a few conversations with folks in the relatively recent past focused on alleged comments made by Matt Reeves. These individuals asked about my feelings on the quote-unquote fact that Reeves quote-unquote revealed that Mr. Freeze would in fact be the next member of the Cape Crusaders Rogues Gallery to be featured in this world. But of course, that revelation never occurred. What so many of these movie outlets have done was ask Matt Reeves about the potential appearance of a given supervillain, and if he didn't outright deny it, then the headline of the article would allude to Reeves coyly teasing Victor Freeze's presence, for example. Whatever gets clicks, I suppose. Though I admittedly do understand the intrigue toward Reeves' feelings on Freeze. People want to know just how much, if at all, this Reeves verse is going to lean into the fantastical, though I don't see that fantastical leap occurring, honestly. This particular world feels exceedingly grounded, so a comic accurate Clayface appearance, for example, would be a wildly jarring development. But those who are craving that more fantastical Batman won't be missing out for long, given the fact that the great James Gunn's DC universe is officially launching this year, which is sure to be more so in that deliberately fanciful vein of storytelling. The announced slate featuring Batman Brave and the Bold, as well as a Clayface flick. As colorful and campy as he's been in past depictions, Victor Freeze would be more so conceivably adapted in this more so realistic world when compared to, say, Killer Croc. After a Fincher-esque interpretation of the Riddler, with Freeze, I would expect some sort of equivalent to the Ice Truck Killer in Dexter Season 1, without the freeze gun and supersuit. I'm assuming the character would have to be some sort of ice-centric serial killer. Could potentially be cool to see this guy back on the big screen, but painted in an exceedingly different light. If we're remaining in the realm of Fincher-esque serial killers, Professor Pig would also be a chilling addition. Good God, no pun intended. I haven't personally heard any Hugo Strange rumors, but he would definitely be a top pick of mine. Firstly, we've never seen the man theatrically, and given where we currently are in this timeline, there's a multitude of organic ways this villain could be integrated. Arkham Asylum has played a role in both projects 1 and 2, so I think it to be only natural that we're introduced to the joint's nefarious head honcho. Strange has also had ties to the Court of Owls in the comics. Personal dream casting? Perhaps Stephen Graham, Tom Hardy, Bryan Cranston, perhaps, Giancarlo Esposito. Poison Ivy is another one of those more so fanciful adversaries, but after thinking it over, she could be a cool and feasible candidate in the potential villain department. Obviously, we wouldn't have a Pamela Isley with plant-centric powers and immunity to poison. The way I would implement her would be via the drug trade, which has been a prevalent component of this grand narrative thus far. Poison Ivy, or simply Ivy, could either be a code name or perhaps the name of a new kind of drug, a bliss replacement. Now, I've always been a fan of the character of Hush and his story. In fact, I once outlined a Hush-centric spec script before attending film school 7 or so years ago. I would definitely be on the side of a cinematic Hush story, but given how popular the book is, I definitely feel that some liberties would have to be taken in order to maintain the secrecy of the story and its twists through the adaptation process. Matt Reeves' sequel to The Batman is unquestionably my most anticipated movie in existence. As I've surely displayed here, I am both a massive believer in him as a storyteller and not at all certain about what's going to happen in this 2027 picture, nor what villains are guaranteed to make an appearance. Court of Owls and Joker have got to be in there though, no? In some capacity? Thanks for watching, folks. Share your opinion on my thoughts, or your own opinion, of The Batman Part 2 and what you're expecting from it. Again, I'm quite sure I read that that was no longer going to be the official title. We shall see.